Welcome back, everyone. And can you believe it? It's our season finale already.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
It really does. All season long, we've been taking those intriguing stacks of sources you've sent in and, picking out the most fascinating bits.
Diving deep, really deep.
Exactly. And this time, it's all about connecting the dots. Like those threads we've seen throughout the season that kind of make you go, wait, what?
Yeah, those moments where you're just like, hold on, what did they just say?
Exactly. And trust me, this finale, well, it's packed with those moments.
It really is. And it's always so fascinating to see what catches the attention of our listeners. And this time around, well, we're diving into something that has captivated people for decades.
The JFK assassination.
Exactly. We're not here to give you the answer, but we will be exploring some of the most compelling controversies. Those lesser known details that make you really think.
The stuff that keeps you up at night.
Absolutely. And your stack this time is full of Dealey Plaza Echo issues. It's like a goldmine of research and analysis on this pivotal event.
Okay, so for anyone who's been living under a rock for the past, 60 years, people have been poring over every single detail of that day in Dallas, trying to piece together what really happened.
It's like a giant puzzle, but with some pieces missing and others that just don't seem to fit.
And right off the bat, in Dealey Plaza Echo, Volume 1, Issue 1, we hit a snag, a discrepancy that really throws a wrench in things.
The location of JFK's head wound.
Okay, so why is that such a big deal?
Well, think about it. Dr. Jenkins, the guy who treated Kennedy at Parkland, specifically remembers a wound on the left side of his head. But later, during the Warren Commission testimony, Spector, well, he seems to dismiss it.
So what, they just, ignored what the doctor said?
It's not that simple, but yeah, the way they handled it raises questions. And if Dr. Jenkins is right about that left side wound, it really challenges the single bullet theory. The idea that one bullet went through both Kennedy and Governor Connally.
Okay, so we're already seeing some cracks in the official narrative.
Definitely. And it only gets more complex from there. In Volume 1, Issue 2, they highlight problems with those diagrams, the ones showing the bullet's trajectory.
The ones that are supposed to prove the single bullet theory.
Exactly. But the article points out misleading captions and inaccuracies. It's like those conflicting accounts about the head wound. It adds fuel to the fire.
Makes you wonder if they, fudge the evidence to fit their story.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, so this is like a detective novel, and we're just getting started. Then in Volume 1, Issue 3, we get a look inside the holdover cells, where they held Oswald.
Apparently, they're still intact.
Wow. Can you imagine being in that space, knowing what happened there?
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that beyond all the theories and the debates, there were real people involved in this.
Real lives forever changed.
Exactly.
Oh, and speaking of people, there's this little detail in that same issue. It sent me down a rabbit hole. Who was the driver of the Secret Service follow-up car?
I've never even thought about that.
Right. But it turns out even seemingly minor roles, they can lead to some interesting questions.
Absolutely. Every detail matters. And then things get even more complex when we jump ahead to Volume 10, Issue 1.
Ooh, what's in store for us now?
This issue introduces us to Arcacha Smith.
Okay, and who's that?
He's connected to both the CIA and anti-Castro activities.
So now we're talking espionage.
Potentially. The article suggests a link between Smith and the assassination, hinting at a much wider conspiracy.
So it wasn't just Oswald acting alone.
That's what the article suggests. And, as we've seen, that's a recurring question in these Dealey Plaza Echo issues.
Hold on tight, everyone, because in Volume 10, Issue 3, we're taking a train ride across Europe.
Passport control, please.
Uh-huh. So this issue digs into Marina Oswald's travels. We're talking passport stamps, train schedules, the whole 9 yards.
It's fascinating, really. The level of detail these researchers go into is incredible. They're scrutinizing, seemingly mundane things like train schedules and passport stamps.
Looking for any little thing that contradicts the official narrative.
Exactly.
And speaking of contradictions, Dealey Plaza Echo, Volume 11, Issue 1, presents a really interesting claim. They say Oswald might have been deliberately misled.
By whom?
By elements within the CIA. And this isn't just about the CIA being involved, it's about internal conflicts.
Like different factions with different goals.
Exactly. And that raises the question. Was Oswald just a pawn in a much bigger game?
It's a chilling thought.
Okay, so are you ready for some geometry?
Uh-oh, this sounds complicated.
Well, in Volume 11, Issue 2, they introduced the flatland theory. It's a way of looking at the single bullet trajectory using a two-dimensional model. like taking the whole crime scene and flattening it out to see if it makes sense.
Okay, I'm kind of following.
And what they find is that for the single bullet theory to work, Connolly would have had to be contorted in a very, very specific way.
Which seems unlikely.
Right. And so the more we dig into this, the more holes we find in the official story.
And in Volume 11, Issue 3, things get even more interesting.
All ears.
They take a close look at the dictabelt recordings, the ones that were supposed to capture the sounds of the assassination.
Okay, so what's wrong with them?
Well, there's a gap.
A gap, like missing audio.
Yeah, and it raises serious concerns about their authenticity.
Like someone tampered with the evidence?
It's a possibility. The article really dives into the technical detail.
Yeah, this is getting intense.
It is. And then in Volume 12, Issue 1, we meet a new character, Elena Garro.
Okay, who is she?
She's a Mexican writer who claims to have met Oswald in Mexico City.
But that completely contradicts the official timeline.
It does. And it lends credence to the idea of multiple Oswalds, or even impersonators.
Wait, multiple Oswalds. Okay, now this is getting really strange.
I know, right? And that's not all. This same issue also describes a weapon called a Delisle carbine.
What's that?
It's a silent bolt-action weapon.
Sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It does, doesn't it? And the article explores the possibility that the assassination involved weapons and technology, well, far more advanced than what was officially acknowledged.
So we're going deeper down the rabbit hole.
Absolutely. Then Dealey Plaza Echo, Volume 12, Issue 3, focuses on Oswald's behavior, specifically in those 77 minutes after the assassination.
What about it?
Well, they pose a series of really perplexing questions. Like, some of the things he did or didn't do just don't add up.
It's like trying to put together a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape.
That's a good way to put it.
And speaking of shapes, Dealey Plaza Echo, Volume 13, Issue 1, looks at the Mormon photo, you know, that famous snapshot of the assassination.
Right, but it's become a battleground for authenticity.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The article gets into the technical aspects of, photographic analysis.
So what are they saying? Was it altered? What does it really show?
It's hard to say for sure.
Wow, this is getting more and more complicated.
It is. And then in Volume 14, Issue 2, there's this fascinating timesheet.
A timesheet?
Yeah, and it reveals the Warren Commission's growing unease with Oswald's fluency in Russian.
So they realized this wasn't just some guy who picked up a few phrases.
Exactly. It really challenges that narrative of him as this, lone, disaffected individual.
So where did he learn Russian?
That's the million-dollar question.
And in that same issue, we meet Mrs. Markham.
Oh, right. She was just trying to catch her bus.
Right. But she ended up witnessing a key moment in history. It's a reminder that, even in the midst of something so monumental, life goes on.
Absolutely.
Her testimony, it's a crucial piece of the puzzle, but like so many others, it's subject to both scrutiny and debate.
It is. And things take a disturbing turn in that same issue. There's an image that allegedly shows a fragment of JFK's skull.
Wait, what?
It's a disturbing image, and it raises serious questions about how the crime scene was secured.
And what it tells us about the investigation as a whole.
Exactly. Then there's the story about those two unidentified police officers who handled the Zapruder film.
Wait, unidentified, like no one knows who they were.
Right. It just adds another layer of mystery to this already incredibly complex case.
It makes you wonder, what else are they hiding?
It does. And then in Volume 15, Issue 1, we meet Will Fritz, the guy who headed the Oswald investigation.
Okay, and what's the deal with him?
Well, instead of this, dedicated detective, we get this picture of a guy who seemed more interested in media attention.
So maybe not the best person to lead the investigation.
Exactly.
And then there's the tragic story of George de Mohrenschildt.
Oh, right. The guy who got caught in a web of lies.
It really highlights the toll this assassination took on those close to Oswald.
It does. And then, just like that, in Volume 15, Issue 3, the lone assassin narrative takes center stage.
It's like someone flipped a switch, and suddenly Oswald is the only suspect.
The article really examines the timeline, questioning how quickly that official narrative solidified.
Despite all the unanswered questions.
Right. It's like they needed a quick and easy answer, even if it didn't quite fit.
And then there's the rifle clip.
Oh, right. That tiny detail with huge implications.
Was it there? Was it missing? Was it planted?
It becomes a focal point for debate.
And in Volume 16, Issue 1, we learn about Oswald's early discharge from the Marines.
He was supposed to serve 6 years, right?
Yeah, but he got out after only 3.
What's the story there?
It raises questions about his military record and whether there's more to it than meets the eye.
And then there's all the evidence, supposedly linking Oswald to the rifle.
The photographs, the witness testimonies, the paper bag, it's like a little too perfect, isn't it?
That's what the article explores, the possibility that some of it was fabricated.
Fabricated.
Or at least manipulated.
Okay, so now, Dealey Plaza Echo, Volume 16, Issue 3, takes us into the world of acoustics.
Trying to pinpoint those gunshots in a chaotic environment like Dealey Plaza, well, it's not easy.
No kidding.
And the article, it highlights all the challenges of sound analysis, especially decades after the fact.
And then there are those conflicting accounts about the bullet itself.
1 minute, it's causing devastating wounds. The next, it's practically pristine.
It's a question that really undermines that single bullet theory.
It does. And then, in Volume 17, Issue 2, we're presented with this mind-blowing possibility.
Go on.
2 Oswalds.
Wait, what? 2 Oswalds.
Lee Harvey Oswald gets arrested in the theater, right? But then a man matching his description is seen driving around, acting suspiciously.
So who was arrested? And who was driving the car?
Exactly. It's like a puzzle within a puzzle.
This is getting weirder by the minute.
I know. And that's not all. That same issue, Volume 17, Issue 2, also looks back at Oswald's language skills. And after analyzing his test scores, they found that he wasn't just conversational in Russian, he was fluent.
Fluent.
Fluent. Capable of understanding complex concepts.
Okay, but where did he learn that?
That's a good question, and one we may never have the answer to.
This is incredible.
It is.
Yeah.
And finally, Dealey Plaza Echo, Volume 17, Issue 2, presents us with conflicting police dispatch transcripts.
About what?
About Officer Tippit, the officer who was killed shortly after the assassination.
Right.
Well, was he at the location where he was shot on his own? Or was he sent there?
That's a crucial detail.
It is. It could completely change our understanding of his murder.
So we've covered a lot of ground. I don't know about you, but my head is spinning. It seems like every time we answer one question, 10 more pop up.
It's a rabbit hole with no end.
What stands out to you from all of this?
It really is. So many layers to this story. We've got these, conflicting accounts, missing evidence, mystery figures, and this possibility of, well, a much bigger conspiracy than anyone initially imagined.
Like peeling back the layers of an onion only to find, like, another onion underneath.
Right.
And Dealey Plaza Echo, well, it just keeps revealing more and more layers.
It does. Like in Volume 2, Issue 2, they introduce us to Igor Vaganov.
Okay, and who was he?
On the very day of the assassination, he decided to report a marital dispute to the FBI.
Talk about strange timing.
Right. Makes you wonder if there was more to his visit than just, a domestic issue.
Especially when you consider this.
What's that?
Vaganov also happened to be a Lee Harvey Oswald lookalike.
Another lookalike. Okay, that's getting a little creepy.
Right. Was this some attempt to create confusion, maybe even establish an alibi for someone?
It's a possibility the article explores, and it's a chilling thought.
Speaking of chilling.
Okay.
Bullets.
Okay.
Dealey Plaza Echo, Volume 3, Issue 1. It goes into bullet analysis.
Yep.
And apparently, the ammunition produced by Western Cartridge Company, the type used in the assassination, well, it wasn't as uniform as you might think.
So the bullets themselves were inconsistent. What does that mean for the single bullet theory?
Well, the article points out that if the bullets weren't uniform, it's harder to say with certainty, that a single bullet could have caused all that damage.
Right, right.
It raises questions about, like, the reliability of the ballistic evidence.
It does.
It's like the puzzle pieces are warping and changing shape right in front of us.
I know. And Volume 3, Issue 2 throws another curveball. They talk about these phone calls.
Phone calls.
Yeah, to the Dallas police immediately after Officer Tippit was shot.
Okay.
But they were never investigated.
Wait, what? Why not?
That's the question, isn't it? Crucial eyewitness accounts potentially ignored?
Could those calls have revealed something that, like, contradicted the official narrative?
It's certainly suspicious.
It is. And the mysteries keep piling up in that same issue. They talk about the identification lineup that Helen Markham attended. Remember, she's one of the key witnesses.
Right, right.
Well, there are suggestions that the lineup might have been staged.
Staged? To do what?
To ensure that Oswald was identified.
If that's true, that casts serious doubt on the whole investigation.
It's like trying to solve a mystery in a house of mirrors. Everything is distorted,
Yeah.
But amidst all this intrigue, Volume 3, Issue 2 also gives us a detailed account of the presidential Lincoln Continental.
The car JFK was riding in.
Yep. It's fascinating how, even an object can become so intertwined with a historical event.
It's a reminder that this car, a symbol of tragedy now, it has its own story.
It's like a silent witness to history. And speaking of witnesses, Volume 4, Issue 1 takes us back to the Zapruder film.
Oh, right. The timing of the first shot.
They argue that if the first shot happened earlier than what's officially claimed, well, it would have been nearly impossible for Oswald to have fired all the shots.
So multiple gunmen.
Exactly. And that directly contradicts the single bullet theory.
The timing's everything in this case.
Right. It's like a domino effect. One piece falls and the whole structure starts to crumble.
Okay, what's next?
In Volume 5, Issue 1, we go back to Oswald's time in New Orleans.
What about it?
His involvement with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee.
His political activities.
Right. It fuels speculation about his role in the assassination. Was he acting alone, or was he part of something bigger? It's a question that just, hangs over this whole case.
It does.
And speaking of hanging over, Volume 5, Issue 2 takes us to Jack Ruby's Carousel Club.
Ooh, the Dallas nightclub.
A hotbed of activity back then.
Yeah.
The article explores the club's clientele, which included, some city officials.
And its potential connections to the assassination.
It's a web of intrigue, and you never know who's pulling the strings.
I know, right? And then Volume 5, Issue 3 tackles a popular misconception.
Oh, what's that?
The myth of the left-handed gun.
Okay, I've heard of that.
For years, people assumed that the rifle was designed for a lefty, like Oswald. It turns out that's completely false.
So the rifle could have been operated by a right-handed person just as easily.
Exactly.
Another piece of evidence debunked, and Dealey Plaza Echo isn't done yet. Volume 6, Issue 2 takes us on a historical journey through Dealey Plaza itself.
From its humble beginnings as a trading post to, well, the site of one of the most infamous events in American history.
It's a reminder that places have memories.
They do.
And speaking of memories, Volume 6, Issue 3 delves into conflicting accounts from Marina Oswald.
About what?
About her husband's alleged attempt to assassinate Richard Nixon.
Oh, really?
The inconsistencies in her story, well, they raise serious questions about her reliability as a witness.
Was she telling the truth? Or was she intentionally misleading investigators?
It's like everyone has their own version of the truth, and it's impossible to know who to believe.
It is.
And then Volume 7, Issue 1 takes us back to those dictabelt recordings. The ones with the suspicious gap.
Right.
This article examines the ongoing debate about whether those recordings actually captured gunshots in Dealey Plaza.
It's still up for debate.
It seems like every piece of evidence in this case is just shrouded in doubt.
And the ambiguity only gets deeper in Volume 8, Issue 1, with, well, the mystery of the open microphone.
An open mic.
Yeah, apparently a microphone was accidentally left on during all the chaos after the assassination.
Wow.
And the article analyzes the recordings and witness testimonies to figure out what it might have captured.
So what did they find?
It's still unclear. It's like this audio time capsule, but buried under so much speculation.
And speaking of speculation, Volume 8, Issue 2 introduces us to yet another Oswald lookalike.
Seriously, how many were there?
I know, right? This one was named Donald Wayne House.
It's almost like Oswald was chosen as a patsy because he had such an, average appearance.
It would make it easier to create confusion.
Exactly.
Okay, so get this. Volume 9, Issue 2 takes us across the pond.
Across the pond.
To explore the role of British intelligence agencies.
Oh, interesting.
It examines whether they had any info about Oswald or, the events leading up to the assassination.
And whether they shared or withheld any of that info from the Americans.
So now we've got international involvement.
It's possible. And then Volume 9, Issue 3 brings us back to the single bullet theory.
Begin.
Yeah, but this time it focuses on the scientific analysis of the bullet itself. Commission Exhibit 399.
What do they find?
They meticulously examine the bullet's trajectory. And what they find, well, it raises serious doubts about the plausibility of the single bullet theory. They even suggest a possible cover-up.
This is getting intense. We've got international intrigue, tampered evidence, and this web of conspiracies that just keeps growing.
I know. What's next? Just keeps getting deeper, doesn't it? And just when you think you've seen it all, Dealey Plaza Echo throws another curveball. Volume 14, Issue 2 looks at this, well, rather curious decision Oswald made.
Oh, what's that?
He ordered his rifle from a company in Chicago.
Why is that weird?
He could have easily gotten one locally, in Dallas.
Yeah. So is he trying to, cover his tracks or something?
It's a question that's puzzled researchers for years. The article explores different possibilities, like what if the rifle itself was planted?
Planted, as in,
Part of a larger frame-up.
wow. So we're back to this idea of a conspiracy, but it's even more, intricate now. Like someone was setting the stage for this whole tragedy way before it even happened.
It's a chilling thought. And then Volume 15, Issue 1, brings up this case of a missing ID card.
A missing ID card.
Yeah, apparently a card with the name A.J. Heidel was found among Oswald's things, but it vanished.
Vanished before they could, document it or something.
Right. It screams cover-up, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Was this just a mistake, or did someone, deliberately conceal evidence?
Evidence that could have linked Oswald to, I don't know, other people, organizations. It's hard to believe something that important could just disappear.
It is. And then Volume 16, Issue 2, shifts our attention to the press.
The media. Yeah, their role in all of this, shaping public opinion.
Oh, right.
It's a good reminder that the media, they can have a huge influence on how events are, perceived and remembered.
Totally.
And this article, it looks at how the media coverage, both right after the assassination and in the years that followed, how it influenced the public's perception of, Oswald.
Yeah.
The investigation.
And all those conspiracy theories.
Exactly.
It's crazy how fast a narrative can take hold, even if it's not, completely accurate.
It is. And speaking of narratives, Volume 17, Issue 1 uncovers this, chilling detail.
Okay, I'm listening.
A top-secret CIA document.
What was in it?
It outlines plans to assassinate Fidel Castro.
Whoa, seriously?
It raises this possibility that the techniques, the networks, everything they used in those alleged Castro plots, maybe they were, repurposed
for
the Kennedy assassination.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is. And finally, in Volume 17, Issue 3, there's this, tantalizing clue, a mysterious map.
A map. Where was it found? Among Oswald's things.
And what was on it?
That's what they're trying to figure out. The article looks at, the markings, the symbols.
I was going to see if it's connected to the assassination.
Right. It's like a treasure map leading to the truth. But the path, it's far from clear.
So here we are, end of our season finale. And I got to say, this deep dive into the JFK assassination, it's been one of the most challenging and thought-provoking we've ever done.
It has been, hasn't it? All those conflicting testimonies, the missing evidence, those mysterious figures, this web of conspiracy that just seems to have no end. It's a story that continues to, I think fascinate and frustrate all at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as frustrating as it can be, it's also incredibly compelling. It forces us to question, everything we think we know and to face this, uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the official story, it's just not the whole story.
That's exactly what makes these Dealey Plaza Echo issues so fascinating. They challenge us to, think critically.
To dig deep.
To question everything.
And to never stop searching for the truth, no matter how, elusive it might be.
And that's the essence of the deep dive. This whole season we've been exploring, venturing into, uncharted territory.
Challenging ourselves to see the world in new ways.
We've tackled so much, from ancient mysteries to cutting-edge science.
And all of it, it wouldn't have been possible without you, our amazing listeners.
Your curiosity fuels our passion. Your questions, they inspire us. And your feedback, it helps us grow.
So thank you for joining us on this journey. We've learned so much together, and we can't wait to, dive into even more fascinating topics with you next season.
Until then, stay curious. Keep questioning.
And never stop exploring.